The conference room went silent except for the sound of cruel laughter. Jin-soo stood frozen, his scarred hands still gripping the mop handle. The expensive leather chair had tipped backward during the commotion, spilling bottled water across the polished mahogany table. Before him, a young man in designer clothes, barely 20, with perfectly styled hair and a watch that cost more than Jin-soo earned in 6 months, clutched his phone, recording. "Look at his hands," the young man held to his friends on video chat. "They're like monster claws. This is the guy who's supposed to clean our building? Dad's charity cases are getting uglier every year." Jin-soo's weathered fingers tightened on the mop. His hands bore the testimony of survival. Burn scars that twisted from his fingertips to his wrists, the skin mottled and tight. 2 fingers on his left hand permanently curled. They were hands that had pulled his daughter from a burning car 14 years ago in Seoul. Hands that had lost their grace but saved a life. He opened his mouth to apologize. Always apologize, stay invisible, keep the job. But before words could form, a voice cut through the room like winter steel. "Marcus, my office. Now." But we should start at the beginning, 6 hours earlier, when Jin-soo's impossible day began. The morning alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m. in the cramped studio apartment Jin-soo shared with his daughter, Seoul. He moved quietly in the darkness, careful not to wake her. At 52, his body protested every movement, the legacy of 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, for the past 8 years since they'd immigrated from South Korea. He studied his hands in the bathroom mirror as he washed them, these constant reminders. In Seoul, these hands had been a surgeon's hands. Steady, precise. They performed over 300 successful operations before the accident that changed everything. The car crash had been sudden, a delivery truck running a red light, T-boning their vehicle on Seoyun's 6th birthday. The impact had ruptured the fuel tank. Jin-soo remembered flames, his wife screaming, and then pure instinct. Reaching into the inferno to unbuckle Soon's seatbelt, pulling her through shattered glass and fire. His wife hadn't survived. His hands, thrust into flames, gripping metal hot enough to melt skin, had been destroyed. Months of surgeries followed, but the nerve damage was permanent. The tremors, the loss of fine motor control, the constant pain. His surgical career ended the moment he chose to save his daughter. He'd never regretted it. Not once. But America had been harder than he'd imagined. His medical credentials didn't transfer. His English was poor. His ruined hands couldn't even hold a pen steadily enough for the recertification exams. So Jin-soo became invisible, a night janitor at Sterling Tower, a 40-story monument to wealth in downtown Seattle. "Appa." Seoyun's sleepy voice came from her bed. At 20 now, a junior at the University of Washington, she'd grown into a brilliant young woman studying biochemistry. She was his entire universe. "Sleep? Yippee and Tao," he whispered. "Beautiful daughter. Early exam today, yes? I can make you breakfast. No? You study. I'll eat at work." He kissed her forehead, his scarred fingers gentle in her hair. Jin-soo took the bus to Sterling Tower, arriving at 5 a.m. when the building was mostly empty. He preferred it this way. Fewer people to stare at his hands, fewer questions about his accent, his past, his fall from surgeon to janitor. The building was headquarters for Sterling Industries, a tech conglomerate run by Nathaniel Sterling, a man Jin-soo had seen only in photographs. Billionaire, philanthropist, a face that appeared on magazine covers and charity galas. Someone who existed in a different universe. Jin-soo's universe was floor wax and toilet paper, and the meditative rhythm of pushing a mop across marble that cost more per square foot than his monthly rent. He worked methodically through the executive floors, invisible to the early arrivals, who rushed past without seeing him. He'd perfected invisibility. Keep your head down. Work hard. Send money to Seoyun's tuition account. That was the entirety of his American dream. Around noon, his supervisor radioed. "Gene, we need you in conference room A on 40. Some kid spilled something. VIP space, so make it spotless." "Yes, sir." Right away. Jin-soo gathered his supplies and took the service elevator to the 40th floor, executive territory, where the air seemed more expensive and the silence more judgmental. He'd cleaned conference room A before, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, a table that could seat 20, art on the walls worth more than he'd earn in a lifetime. The door was ajar. He knocked softly, Always announce yourself. Don't startle the important people," and entered. A young man sprawled in one of the leather chairs, feet propped on the conference table, phone pressed to his ear. He wore the casual uniform of inherited wealth: designer hoodie, distressed jeans that cost a fortune to look cheap, sneakers that were somehow both pristine and deliberately scuffed. He didn't acknowledge Jin-soo's entrance. Jin-soo spotted the spill, bottled water pulled on the table and dripping onto the carpet. He approached quietly, setting down his bucket, preparing to clean. His hands, always his treacherous hands, trembled slightly as he wrung out the mop. "Yeah, Dad's making me come to the office," the young man said into his phone, loud enough that he clearly didn't care about being overheard. Some character-building bullshit. Like I need to understand the business from the ground up. He laughed. "The ground is where the peasants work." Jin-soo kept his eyes down, mopping water from the table. That's when the young man's chair tipped backward. He'd been rocking it on two legs. He yelped, arms flailing, and the chair crashed down, knocking over a second water bottle. "Shit." Jin-soo moved instinctively to help, reaching out to steady the chair. "Don't touch me." The young man scrambled away as if burned. Then his eyes locked on Jin-soo's hands, and his expression shifted from alarm to disgust. "Oh my God," he said, bringing his phone around to record. "Look at his hands." Jin-soo pulled his hands back instinctively, tucking them against his chest. The gesture was pure reflex, shame learned from years of stares, whispers, children who cried at the sight of his scars. Marcus Sterling. The voice that cut through the room carried absolute authority. "My office." "Now." Jin-soo turned toward the doorway. Nathaniel Sterling stood there in an impeccable charcoal suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expression carved from granite. At 60, he carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of people who moved billions with their decisions. But it was his eyes that struck Jin-soo. They weren't looking at Marcus. They were fixed on Jin-soo's hands with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "Dad, I was just—" Marcus started. "I said now." Nathaniel's tone left no room for argument. To Jin-soo, his voice softened fractionally. "Please continue your work. I apologize for the disturbance." Marcus slouched out, phone shoved in his pocket, his earlier bravado evaporated. Nathaniel followed, closing the door behind them. Jin-soo stood alone in the conference room, his heart hammering. He'd been recorded, mocked. In 8 years of invisibility, he'd never had an interaction pierce through quite like this. His hands shook worse than usual as he finished cleaning the spill, erasing all evidence of the incident. "Keep your head down. Stay invisible." He returned to his janitorial closet on the service level, putting away supplies with methodical care. His supervisor would probably call soon, to fire him, most likely. The son of the company's owner had been humiliated. Someone would pay for that humiliation, and it wouldn't be Marcus Sterling. Jin-soo began mentally calculating how long his savings would last. Where else might hire a 52-year-old immigrant janitor with limited English and damaged hands? Whether Seo-yoon would have to take a semester off. "Mr. Park." Jin-soo spun. Nathaniel Sterling stood in the doorway of the janitorial closet, looking absurdly out of place among the mops and industrial cleaner. "Mr. Sterling." Jin-soo bowed instinctively, a gesture from his Korean upbringing. "I apologize for." "You have nothing to apologize for." Nathaniel stepped inside, and Jin-soo noticed he was carrying a leather portfolio. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Those scars on your hands, how did you get them?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Jin-soo answered without thinking. "Fire. Car accident. 14 years ago, in Seoul. You pulled someone out." It wasn't a question, but Jin-soo nodded anyway. "My daughter. She was 6. Nathaniel's expression shifted, something raw crossing his features before his composure returned. "Before the accident, what did you do?" "In Seoul." Jin-soo hesitated. He never talked about his past. It only made the present more painful. I worked at hospital." "Doing what?" "Sir, I should return to work." "Doing what, Mr. Park?" There was something urgent in Nathaniel's voice now. Jin-soo met his eyes. "I was thoracic surgeon. Heart, lungs. I performed surgeries." The silence stretched between them. Nathaniel opened the portfolio and extracted a photograph, holding it out. "Do you recognize this man?" Jin-soo took the photo with trembling hands. It showed a Western man in his 30s, smiling in a hospital bed. Tubes and monitors surrounded him, but his eyes were bright with life. The memory crashed over Jin-soo like a wave. Seoul National University Hospital. 12 years ago. Emergency heart transplant. He was tourist, American tourist. Massive infection, needed immediate surgery, or would die. Very complicated case, very risky. You saved his life. Nathaniel's voice was rough. That was my brother David. He traveled to South Korea for a tech conference and collapsed at his hotel. The doctors said he needed a miracle. He paused. You were that miracle. Jin-soo stared at the photograph, at the face he'd almost forgotten. He'd performed hundreds of surgeries. They blurred together after a while. But he remembered this one. The desperation of the family, the delicate work of repairing damage that should have been fatal. I just did my job, Jin-soo said quietly. Your job? Nathaniel laughed, a sound without humor. Mr. Park, you gave my family 12 more years with David. 12 years of birthdays, holidays, memories. He lived long enough to walk his daughter down the aisle. Long enough to meet his grandson. His voice cracked slightly. He passed away last year, peacefully, surrounded by people who loved him. Because of you. I did not know, Jin-soo whispered. I tried to find you. After David recovered, I tried to track down the surgeon who saved him to thank you properly. But by the time I got the resources together for a proper search, you'd left Seoul. The trail went cold. Nathaniel gestured at the janitorial closet. And now I find you here, cleaning my floors, while my spoiled son mocks the hands that saved my brother's life. Jin-soo didn't know what to say. His mind reeled. I fired Marcus from his internship, Nathaniel continued. Not because of what he did to you, though that would be reason enough. Because in 20 years of disappointing me, today he showed me definitively that I've failed as a father. He doesn't understand that success means nothing if you lose your humanity. He paused. I'm sending him to work his way up from the bottom. Real work, not executive training. Maybe he'll learn what you already know about dignity and sacrifice. Mr. Sterling, you do not need to. I need to do many things. Nathaniel's voice was firm. First, I'm tripling your salary, effective immediately. Sir. Second, I'm establishing a scholarship fund in David's name, and Seoul will be the first recipient. Full tuition, room and board, and a stipend for expenses through her PhD if she wants it. Jin-soo's knees went weak. I cannot accept. You can and you will. But there's something else. Nathaniel pulled out another document. I'd been working with the State Medical Board and the University of Washington. Your credentials from Seoul National University are impeccable. With some accommodations for your hands, assistance for the fine motor work, voice-activated surgical equipment, things that exist now that didn't 12 years ago, they believe you could complete a modified recertification program. The words didn't make sense. Jin-soo's ears were ringing. I cannot perform surgery. My hands can still save lives. You're saying I can be surgeon again? Jin-soo's voice emerged as barely a whisper. The janitorial closet suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Nathaniel set the document on the supply shelf. I'm saying you never stopped being a surgeon. You just lost the ability to practice. But medicine has evolved. Robotic surgery, AI-assisted procedures, voice command systems, tools that work around physical limitations. He paused. The University of Washington Medical Center has a program specifically designed for physicians with disabilities who want to return to practice. I've already spoken with the department head. They're willing to work with you. Jin-soo's scarred hands trembled violently. The cost is covered. David left me executor of his estate. His final wish was that his money go towards something meaningful, something that honored the gift you gave him. Nathaniel's voice grew thick. Let me do this. Let me give back even a fraction of what you gave my family. I need to think, of course. Take all the time you need. Nathaniel handed him a business card with a personal cell number written on the back. But Jin-soo, may I call you Jin-soo? Jin-soo nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Don't let shame make this decision. Don't let years of being invisible convince you that you don't deserve to be seen again. Nathaniel glanced at Jin-soo's hands. Those scars are proof that you're exactly the kind of doctor the world needs. Someone who understands sacrifice, who knows what it costs to save a life. After Nathaniel left, Jin-soo sat on an overturned bucket in the closet for 20 minutes, holding the photograph of a man he'd saved and forgotten. a man whose life had rippled forward in ways Jin-soo never imagined. That evening, he found Seo-yin at their apartment's tiny kitchen table, buried in biochemistry notes. When he told her everything, haltingly, in a mixture of Korean and broken English, she cried for 10 minutes straight. "Appa, you have to do it," she said, gripping his scarred hands in her smooth ones. "You have to try." "I am afraid," he admitted. "Afraid I cannot do it anymore. Afraid I will fail." "You pulled me from fire," Seo-yin said fiercely. "You came to a new country and worked jobs that hurt your pride, so I could have a future. You've never failed at anything that mattered." 3 weeks later, Jin-soo started the recertification program. It was brutal, relearning procedures with adaptive equipment, proving his knowledge was current, convincing skeptical board members that hands didn't have to be perfect to guide healing. The other candidates were half his age, their hands unmarked, their confidence unshaken by years of invisibility. But Jin-soo had something they didn't: the memory of what those hands had cost, what they'd saved, what they represented. Every time he wanted to quit, he thought of Seo-yin, 6 years old and terrified, pulled from flames. He thought of David Sterling, a stranger in a foreign hospital, given 12 more years of life. Nathaniel became an unexpected ally. He attended Jin-soo's presentations to the medical board, speaking about his brother, about second chances, about the difference between technical perfection and true healing. His testimony carried weight. Money always did, but it was Jin-soo's skill that ultimately convinced them. 18 months after that day in the conference room, Jin-soo scrubbed in for his first surgery at University of Washington Medical Center. His hands still tremored, the scars still pulled tight, but robotic surgical arms translated his broader movements into microscopic precision, and a team of residents assisted with the delicate work his fingers couldn't quite manage. The patient was a 17-year-old girl with a congenital heart defect. As Jin-soo guided the robotic instruments through the intricate repair, he felt something he'd lost years ago: purpose beyond survival. This was what his hands were meant to do, even in their broken state. This was who he'd always been, underneath the invisibility. The surgery took 6 hours. When it was done, successful, textbook perfect according to the monitoring surgeon, Jin-soo stepped out of the operating theater to find Nathaniel and Seo-yin waiting together. "How did you?" Jin-soo started. "Mr. Sterling called me," Seo-yin said, beaming. "Said I should be here for this." Nathaniel extended his hand, then seemed to reconsider and pulled Jin-soo into a fierce embrace instead. "David would be so proud. I'm so proud." Over Nathaniel's shoulder, Jin-soo saw someone else: Marcus Sterling, standing awkwardly near the wall, no longer the arrogant boy from the conference room. 6 months of working in Sterling Industries' mailroom, then the warehouse, then customer service had carved away his entitlement like sculptor's clay. Marcus approached slowly. "Dr. Park, I know I don't have the right to call you that, or to say anything really, but..." He stopped, gathering courage. "I'm sorry. For what I said, what I did. I was cruel because I'd never learned not to be." He glanced at his father. "I'm trying to be different now. Better." Jin-soo studied the young man. He saw genuine shame there, genuine effort at growth. "You know what I learned?" Jin-soo said, his English stronger now after months of medical classes. "Everyone can change. Everyone can be more than worst moment." He held up his scarred hands. "These hands used to be surgeons' hands. Then they were janitors' hands. Now they are surgeons' hands again. Same hands, different story. You can write different story too." Marcus nodded, blinking rapidly. 6 months after that first surgery, Jin-soo performed his 100th procedure, a milestone the medical center celebrated with a small gathering. In the crowd were his residents, colleagues who had become friends, and the families of patients he'd saved. Seo-yin stood in front, about to graduate summa cum laude with a biochemistry degree and acceptance letters from 5 top PhD programs. Nathaniel had become like family, an unexpected uncle figure who joined them for Korean dinners in Jin-soo's new apartment, larger now, in a safer neighborhood, who talked business with Seo-yin and medicine with Jin-soo, who'd learned to say "Gamsahamnida" with an atrocious American accent that made them all laugh. During the celebration, a young girl approached Jin-soo, the 17-year-old he'd operated on in his first surgery. She carried a drawing she'd made, a picture of hands, scarred but gentle, holding a heart. "You saved my life," she said simply. I'm going to be a doctor too someday. Because of you. That night, alone in his apartment, Jin-soo looked at his hands in the bathroom mirror. The same ritual from years of mornings, but different now. These hands had been a surgeon's tools, then a father's desperate weapons, then instruments of invisible labor, and now tools of healing again. They'd always been the same hands. The world had just needed time to see them properly. Jin-soo pulled out his phone and texted Nathaniel, still marveling at having a personal number for a billionaire saved in his contacts. Thank you for seeing me when I had forgotten how to see myself. The response came quickly. Thank you for saving my brother when no one else could. And for teaching my son, and me, what real strength looks like. Jin-soo smiled. Tomorrow he had 2 surgeries scheduled, a valve replacement and a bypass. After that, he'd promised to meet Soyeon for dinner to celebrate her acceptance to Stanford's biochemical engineering PhD program. His life had become full in ways he'd stopped imagining possible during those years of invisibility. The American dream, Jin-soo had learned, wasn't about the absence of struggle. It was about the possibility of resurrection, that you could fall so far that the world stopped seeing you, yet still find your way back to who you were always meant to be. He looked at his scarred hands one more time. They'd never be perfect, but perfect wasn't the point. The point was that they'd saved his daughter, saved strangers, saved ultimately himself. They were hands that told a story of sacrifice and survival and second chances. They were, in every way that mattered, exactly the hands he was meant to have.